The Pentagon lobby on a Monday morning was its usual whirl of disciplined chaos. Uniforms in crisp lines, polished boots echoing against the marble floors, the hum of conversations about briefings, troop deployments, and operational security. Colin Reeves, major in the Army Intelligence Corps, rubbed at the base of his neck. 3 hours of sleep had turned into an old friend, and the knot in his shoulder reminded him of that. Today was briefing day, one he couldn't afford to mess up, and already the tension was squeezing his chest. He was running through his checklist, mentally ticking off operational priorities when she appeared. From the revolving doors came a woman mid-30s wearing a navy hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. Nothing extraordinary about her attire, nothing that screamed threat or VIP. And yet Colin's gut tightened instantly. Civilians came and went, but this was different. The way she moved, the calm in her step, carried an unspoken confidence that didn't belong to a tourist or a contractor. He watched as she stepped toward the security line. Eyes forward, posture straight, her backpack slung casually over one shoulder. No hesitation, no confusion. She moved as if she already owned the space. Colin's instincts, honed over years of combat simulations and real-world intelligence operations, screamed, "Don't trust appearances." "Ma'am," he called out, striding forward, his voice firm, carrying the authority that came with his rank. "This entrance isn't for civilians. Tour start at." "I'm not here for a tour," she interrupted softly, almost under her breath. Her voice had a quiet steel to it, the kind that made you listen even when you weren't supposed to. She pulled a lanyard from under her hoodie. Colin barely registered what he saw before his eyes widened. It wasn't the standard visitor badge, not the contractor ID that the building churned out like cafeteria tickets. It was black, matte black, unadorned except for the emblem of a barely recognizable agency that very few were cleared to even know existed. Colin's hand twitched toward the scanner beside the restricted elevator. He had seen level 9 badges before, but only in classified briefings, never in the wild, never in front of his face. She didn't hesitate. She raised the badge to the scanner, and for a moment time seemed to stretch. Colin held his breath. The scanner beeped. A single green light blinked. The elevator door slid open with a smooth, metallic whisper. Colin's mouth went dry. "Ma'am, wait, you can't." But it was too late. She stepped in, disappeared into the elevator as if she had melted into the shadows themselves. The door slid closed, leaving Colin frozen, heart hammering. "Who the hell are you?" he muttered, mostly to himself. His mind raced. There were only two explanations. Either this woman was a mistake in the system, a catastrophic breach, or she was someone very, very powerful, someone no one in this building questioned. Colin's instincts demanded he act, but protocol held him back. He wasn't cleared to follow into the restricted elevator. Not that it mattered. By the time he could think of a way to justify it, she was gone. He grabbed his phone, dialing the security desk in a rush. "Unit 4, I need a badge run. Female, mid-30s, civilian clothes, navy hoodie. She just accessed the strategic operations elevator." The officer on the other end hesitated. "Sir, that's not possible. Only level 9 or higher can access that elevator." Colin pressed, "Run it anyway." There was a pause, the kind that made a man's blood run cold. Then a nervous voice. "Major, her badge, her clearance, sir. I don't think I'm allowed to read it out loud." Colin's pulse spiked. "Try me." The officer swallowed audibly and rotated the monitor toward him, eyes flicking nervously to the hallway. The name on the screen made him stagger back. Avery Hale. Clearance level 9. Division Shadow Directive. Status active. Colin's stomach turned. Shadow Directive. The name had haunted whispers in the intelligence community, whispered about in backrooms, dismissed as myth. It wasn't on any official chart, wasn't listed in personnel files. And yet here it was. "Shadow Directive isn't real," Colin muttered, disbelief clawing at him. It is, the officer replied, voice shaking. Colin's gaze snapped to the elevator doors. If someone with mythical clearance was in there, alone, he had to know why. He had to know what she was doing. Then his phone vibrated. An unknown number. A message. Do not follow her. This is your only warning. Colin's stomach dropped. His eyes darted around. Was it a prank? Or worse, a real warning? Someone somewhere knew he was watching. Someone was monitoring him. Adrenaline surged. He had a choice. Ignore the warning, follow protocol, and hope this was a routine procedure, or chase after her, risking his career, his life, and potentially the secrets that might unravel if he crossed the line. He swallowed hard, mind racing. What did Shadow Directive want in the war room? And why did it feel like the fate of more than just a briefing hinged on it? Colin's gaze drifted back to the closed elevator doors. A shiver ran down his spine as he imagined the room beyond. The war room wasn't just any operational center. It was the nerve center of national defense, where the Pentagon's highest-ranking officials gathered in crisis. And right now, a single woman held the keys. Who was Avery Hale? He clenched his fists, trying to steady the tremor in his body. Something about her presence was different, unlike anyone he'd encountered in all his years in intelligence. There was a calmness to her that unnerved him, a quiet certainty that radiated control, even as she defied all the rules. Colin couldn't stop thinking about the badge, black, matte, authority that surpassed generals and colonels alike. Whoever she was, she had power he couldn't even imagine. And yet there was something else, something fragile, almost human, hiding beneath that controlled exterior. And that thought made him wonder even more, why now? The war room doors loomed in his mind like a forbidden threshold. What she was about to do, what she had already set into motion, he could only guess. But one thing was certain, this wasn't just a routine Monday morning. This was something else, something dangerous. The green light of the scanner seemed to burn in his memory, searing a warning he couldn't ignore. And then, as if the universe wanted to remind him of his place, the elevator doors closed with a whisper. Colin Reeves stood frozen, heart pounding, mind racing. Somewhere in the depths of the Pentagon, Avery Hale moved forward, past every restriction, every protocol, and every expectation. And all he could do was watch, helpless, as the doors disappeared. Who was she really? And what did she intend to unlock? He didn't know yet, but he was about to find out, and nothing would ever be the same. Colin Reeves paced the narrow hallway outside the war room, the polished floors reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights overhead. His boots clicked like gunshots in the empty corridor. The security officer's warning still echoed in his head. You weren't authorized to see that. But Colin couldn't let it go. He had to know who Avery Hale was, and more importantly, what she was doing in the war room. He pulled out his phone again, his fingers trembling as he typed a quick message to his trusted contact in the intelligence division. I need clearance for Shadow Directive. Now, don't ask questions. He sent it and stared at the screen. Seconds felt like hours. The war room doors loomed ahead, locked from the inside, a physical barrier between him and the answers he craved. Every officer he passed seemed oblivious, caught in their own panic. But Colin's mind raced, piecing together fragments from the little he knew. A black badge, a mythical division, and a woman who had survived the impossible. The security officer finally approached him, sweating, looking like a man who had seen a ghost. Major, I ran her badge again, he whispered, glancing around nervously. You're not going to like what I found. Colin's jaw tightened. Tell me now. The officer swallowed. Avery Hale, she's real. Shadow Directive, it's real, and she's active. Colin's blood ran cold. Active, he repeated, trying to keep his voice steady. What does that mean? The officer hesitated, lowering his voice even further. It means she's on a mission that supersedes every chain of command in this building. She doesn't report to anyone you know. Not generals, not the Joint Chiefs, not even the Secretary of Defense. She answers to a group that doesn't officially exist. Colin felt the room tilt around him. A secret division, higher than the generals, invisible to everyone except a select few. "Do you understand what this means?" the officer asked, his voice trembling. "She can override everything, all access, all security, even the war room." Colin exhaled sharply, trying to absorb the weight of that statement. So that's why the elevator opened, why the doors are locked from the outside. She's untouchable. The officer leaned closer, whispering like the walls themselves had ears. "Sir, you need to step back. Whatever she's doing, it's dangerous. She's not here for protocol. She's here because something is happening, something classified, something we don't understand." Colin's gut tightened. "Step back," he repeated. "I don't have the luxury of stepping back. Not when someone like her, someone who survived in Berlin, is inside the war room. If she's here, something catastrophic is about to unfold." The officer's eyes widened. "You've heard of Berlin?" Colin froze. Berlin. The name triggered memories he had buried deep within his training files. He had studied the operation in briefings, carefully redacted reports, and declassified intelligence assessments. Berlin wasn't just another overseas mission. It was a disaster disguised as a failed extraction. Entire convoys had been wiped out, entire units lost. Survivors were rare. And one of them had a black badge, the kind only a handful of operatives could ever hold. "That was years ago," Colin said quietly. "She survived, all of her team gone." "Yes," the officer whispered, his voice hollow. "And that's why she's here. Because what happened during Berlin wasn't just a tragedy. It was a warning the Pentagon ignored." Colin felt a shiver crawl down his spine. A warning. The officer nodded, voice barely audible. "A test, for the enemy, for us. And now she's here because the test is about to be activated again." Colin's mind raced. He needed to see the war room, to understand what Avery Hale had seen, to understand why she was back, why she had access to every system in the building, and why her presence alone made the security infrastructure quake. He stepped forward, closer to the door. His heart hammered in his chest. A sudden chime echoed through the corridor. His phone vibrated again. Another message from the unknown number. "You are watching. You are a risk. Do not interfere." Colin clenched his jaw. He had always followed orders, always adhered to protocol, always stayed within the lines. But something about Avery Hale, about the war room, about Shadow Directive, it all demanded action, demanded defiance. He knew then that he couldn't stay on the sidelines. With a deep breath, he approached the war room doors. The metallic surface gleamed under the lights, and the biometric scanner glowed faintly. He placed his hand on the scanner, expecting it to reject him. The screen flashed green. Colin froze. "What?" The doors remained closed, but the scanner's light confirmed something impossible. Someone or something was letting him in. Before he could process it, a security officer barked. "Major Reeves, step back. You are not authorized." Colin ignored the warning. Every instinct in his body screamed to stop, but curiosity, urgency, and fear propelled him forward. The doors clicked, unlocking just slightly, enough for him to see inside. The war room was dark except for holographic displays and satellite feeds, casting eerie blue light across the massive room. He could see her silhouette. Avery Hale standing perfectly still, her attention fixed on the central console. Colin's breath caught. The aura around her wasn't just authority, it was something primal, something forged in the fires of survival. Years of trauma, years of being erased, had shaped her into a force of nature. And she was here for a reason. Suddenly, a new alert flashed across the central console. Red markers on the satellite feed blinked violently. Colin squinted. These weren't routine alerts. These were high-priority threat markers, locations, targets, coordinates. He felt a cold shiver. The Pentagon, the Capitol, the nation itself, he realized in that moment was at risk, and only she had the power to act. Colin wanted to speak, to step forward, to ask questions, but he was paralyzed. His phone buzzed again, but this time he didn't need to look. He already knew what it would say. "Your presence is noted. Do not interfere." He swallowed hard. Questions, doubts, fear, they all collided in his chest, but he couldn't back down, not now. Colin took a step closer, leaning toward the narrow opening in the door. He strained his ears. Her voice, calm, precise, commanding, broke the silence. "Protocol Black Sun is initiated," she said. Colin's stomach dropped. Protocol Black Sun. He had studied countless contingency protocols in his career. He had never, ever seen that name listed anywhere official. Not in manuals, not in briefings, not even whispered in simulations. And now it was real, and Avery Hale was executing it. He felt the weight of the moment press down on him. Every rule he had lived by, every command he had obeyed, suddenly seemed meaningless. The woman in front of him had survived death, erased history, and now, unbeknownst to anyone else, was acting on intelligence so secret, so powerful, it could reshape the nation. Colin exhaled slowly, fighting to steady his racing heart. One thought burned through his mind. "I need to know what she knows. I need to follow her. I need to understand before it's too late." And with that he made his choice. He would not step back. He would step forward. Into the unknown. Into the war room. Into the secrets Avery Hale was ready to reveal. Secrets no one, not even the highest-ranking generals, were allowed to see. And as he stepped closer, the last message on his phone flashed one final warning. "Once you enter, there is no turning back." Colin Reeves pressed his palm against the cold metal of the war room doors, every nerve in his body screaming to turn back. But curiosity, urgency, and fear pushed him forward. The green light from the scanner still glowed faintly, as if granting him permission he had no right to receive. He slipped inside, and the war room swallowed him in shadows and blue light. Holographic displays hovered midair, showing maps, satellite feeds, and streams of encrypted data. The sheer scale of the operation was overwhelming, each screen pulsing with information only someone at the highest clearance could interpret. And then he saw her. Avery Hale, standing motionless at the center console, her face illuminated by the glow of the screens, every muscle in her body taut, every movement precise. Colin froze. She didn't flinch at his entry, didn't even glance at him. She wasn't just calm, she was untouchable, a hurricane in human form contained by years of discipline and sheer willpower. He swallowed hard. "Major, I mean ma'am," he said cautiously. I need to understand. Who are you? What is Shadow Directive?" Avery finally turned her gaze to him. Her eyes, piercing and unyielding, locked onto his. "You're asking questions you shouldn't even know to ask," she said quietly. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had survived death, someone who had seen the worst humanity had to offer and lived. "If I tell you, nothing will ever be the same." Colin felt the chill in her words. "I've seen enough," he said, voice steady despite his racing heart. "I've survived missions, ambushes, intelligence failures. I can handle it." Avery's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "We'll see." She turned back to the console, her fingers dancing over the holographic interface. Colin watched, mesmerized, as files, maps, and encrypted data unfolded like a three-dimensional tapestry of war and secrets. One name kept repeating across multiple files: Berlin. Colin's stomach tightened. Berlin, the disaster overseas, the operation that had wiped out an entire convoy, leaving only whispers and a handful of survivors. Avery Hale was the last one. She had survived where no one else could. Berlin, he murmured. Her eyes flicked to him. "You know about it." He nodded slowly. "I studied it, Training files, declassified briefings, everything we were allowed to see. You survived, everyone else didn't. She didn't respond. Instead, she pulled up a single file, a grainy image burned with the haze of time and smoke. A convoy on fire, dust choking the horizon. Soldiers strewn across the sand. One figure sat amid the wreckage. A woman, battered, bloodied, alive. Colin's breath caught. It was her. Even through the distortion, through the smoke, through years of secrecy, he recognized the eyes. The same eyes that now stared calmly at the war room displays. She was supposed to die, Colin whispered, more to himself than to Avery. She was supposed to be erased, Avery corrected softly, voice heavy with grief. But I refused to be forgotten. Colin felt a wave of respect and fear wash over him. This was a woman who had survived the impossible, who had carried the weight of loss and betrayal alone, and who now held the fate of the nation in her hands. "What happened, Avery?" he asked. "Why Shadow Directive? Why are you here now?" She glanced at him, eyes sharp. "Because Berlin was never the end. It was a beginning. They tested me. They tested the entire unit. And they failed to stop what was coming next. I was erased by design. My file locked, my existence classified to the point of myth. And yet here I am. Because the threat Berlin warned us about is back." Colin's heart pounded. "The threat is back." "Yes," she said, voice low, steady. "And no one else knows it's here. No generals, no intelligence committee, not even the president." Colin swallowed. He had faced ambushes, insurgencies, terrorist plots, but what she was implying was on a scale he couldn't even imagine. And she had been carrying the knowledge silently, alone, for years. He tried to comprehend the layers of secrecy, betrayal, and survival. "And this Protocol Black Sun you mentioned." Avery's eyes narrowed. Protocol Black Sun is not a procedure. It is a response, a countermeasure, a way to stop the activation of what Berlin began. Colin's fingers tightened into fists. Activation. What's being activated? She hesitated, and for the first time Colin saw a flicker of emotion cross her face. Fear, grief, anguish. Embedded units, sleeper cells, advanced weapon systems already inside our borders. They've been waiting for the signal for years. The Pentagon ignored my warnings. They erased me. They buried Berlin, but they didn't stop them, and now, her voice hardened. Now it's happening. Colin's stomach turned. "You've been monitoring them all this time." "Yes," Avery said. Her fingers flew over the console again. Satellite images, signals, and encrypted locations blinked across the room. From the shadows, without support, without authorization, without anyone believing me. Colin felt his throat tighten. He had heard rumors, whispers about ghost agents. But this was real. Avery Hale had survived betrayal, disaster, and erasure, and she was the only one capable of stopping a threat that no one else even knew existed. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his nerves. Then why now? Why appear at the Pentagon? She looked at him, eyes sharp, almost piercing. "Because the timeline accelerated. The signal has been sent. Protocols initiated. If I don't act now, millions could die, and the world will never know why." Colin's mind raced. "So this badge, Shadow Directive, it gives you access to everything." Avery nodded. "Everything. Because sometimes, to stop the unimaginable, you must exist outside the system. You must move faster than bureaucracy, beyond hierarchy. I hold the keys because I survived Berlin, and now I carry the responsibility." Colin exhaled slowly, trying to process. The war room was no longer a symbol of order, but of chaos narrowly restrained by one woman. He had always believed in protocol, in structure, in chain of command, but all of that now seemed fragile, irrelevant. Suddenly, a loud alarm shattered the tense silence. Red lights flashed on the holographic displays. A blinking coordinate pulsed violently over Washington, D.C. Colin's heart leapt into his throat. "They're already moving," Avery said, voice calm but urgent. Embedded units are activating as we speak. This is why I'm here, to stop them before it's too late. Colin felt a cold sweat break out across his skin. The stakes were no longer abstract, no longer theoretical. Avery Hale had survived death, outlived betrayal, and now stood as the only barrier between a national catastrophe and total chaos. He wanted to ask questions, so many questions, but he knew there wasn't time. Protocol Black Sun was in motion. The war room's displays reflected the deadly precision of an enemy who had spent years planning, waiting, and lying in the shadows. Colin took a deep breath, finally understanding the weight of her burden. Then, what do I do? Avery's eyes met his, steady, unwavering. You follow, you trust, and you move faster than fear. Because once we step outside these doors, everything changes, and there is no going back. Colin swallowed, heart racing, mind spinning. The war room suddenly felt like the threshold of a war no one else could see. A war fought in silence, in shadows, against an enemy that had already embedded itself deep inside the nation. And Avery Hale was the only one who could stop it. The air in the room seemed to pulse, as if acknowledging the tension, the stakes, the impossible odds stacked against them. The red markers on the maps flickered again, like a countdown. Colin exhaled slowly, tightening his jaw. He had a choice: follow protocol, remain safe, and watch from the sidelines, or step into the unknown with a woman who had already survived the impossible. He stepped forward, and in that instant, he knew there was no turning back. Colin Reeves followed Avery Hale as she moved to the central console of the war room. The air was tense, humming with the energy of anticipation. The holographic displays cast cold blue light across the room, painting Avery's face with ghostly shadows. She didn't glance at him. She never did. Not really. Every movement she made was precise, calculated, as though she had rehearsed this moment countless times in her mind. Colin tried to absorb everything, the sheer scale of the operation. Satellite feeds scrolling across the room, blinking red markers, encrypted communications flashing across the holographic maps. His military training screamed at him. These weren't routine alerts. These were high-level, imminent threats, something even generals didn't get to see. He leaned closer. Avery, what is Protocol Black Sun? His voice was barely audible over the quiet hum of servers and displays. She didn't answer. Instead, she typed rapidly on the console. A holographic map expanded, zooming in on key locations across Washington, D.C. and surrounding areas. Blinking red dots pulsed with urgency. Colin's chest tightened as he tried to comprehend the scale. These were coordinates, targets, nodes, embedded threats, some physical, some digital. And one thing was painfully clear: they were all already active. Before Colin could speak, the war room doors behind them rattled. A metallic clanging echoed through the cavernous chamber. Avery's head flicked toward the sound, calm but alert. Colin's heart raced. Someone outside. Not someone, Avery said quietly. Everyone. He turned slowly. The doors, normally locked from the outside, remained closed, but voices were raised on the other side. Officers, generals, and security personnel shouted over one another, their panic growing with every second. Colin recognized some of the voices: trusted colleagues, senior officials he had worked with for years. "What's going on?" Colin muttered. Avery ignored him, her fingers flying across the console. She opened multiple encrypted channels simultaneously. The holographic map shifted again, revealing a live feed of the lobby outside. Security guards clustered near the doors, weapons drawn, scanning for threats. The officers at the desk barked orders into their radios, trying desperately to regain control. "Major Reeves," Avery said without turning to him, "you're not supposed to be here. Technically, no one is. The war room locks out all unauthorized personnel during a Black Sun operation." I know," Colin said, swallowing hard. "But I need to see this. I need to understand what's happening." She finally turned her gaze toward him. Her eyes were sharp, commanding, but there was a faint trace of exhaustion beneath the steel. If you see this, there's no going back. You will know things you cannot unknow. You will be part of a mission you cannot refuse. Colin nodded, heart hammering. I understand. Avery tapped the console, and the holographic map zoomed in on a single blinking red dot. This is the epicenter, she said softly. Everything moves from here. Colin squinted. What is it? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she activated a series of internal communications. The war room screens filled with encrypted codes, satellite feeds, drone trajectories, and classified intel reports. Colin felt dizzy trying to process it all. Each line of code was a lifeline or a threat, every red marker a potential disaster waiting to unfold. And then Avery spoke. This is not a simulation, not a drill, not a contingency plan. Everything you see is real. The embedded units trained, armed, and in position are already active. If we do nothing, millions could die. Colin's throat tightened. Embedded units, you mean sleeper cells already inside our borders? Avery nodded. Yes, they've been waiting for the signal for years. In Berlin was supposed to be a warning. It wasn't taken seriously. And now they're moving forward. Colin's stomach turned. He had read reports, seen intelligence briefings, and trained for countless worst-case scenarios, but nothing prepared him for this. The enemy wasn't overseas. They weren't confined to a battlefield. They were here. Inside the nation, inside the systems, inside the war room itself. A sharp alarm blared suddenly, louder than the voices outside. Red lights flickered across the holographic displays. A new set of coordinates blinked in rapid succession. Avery's fingers flew over the console, bringing up drone feeds, satellite images, and intercepted communications in a dizzying cascade. They're moving faster than we expected, she said, her voice calm but urgent. We have less than 4 hours before the first strike activates. Every minute counts. Colin swallowed hard. What do I do? She didn't answer. Instead, she handed him a secure tablet. The screen displayed a single line of code. Access. Level 6 required. Authorization OVERRIDDEN by Black Sun Protocol. Colin stared. I'm not cleared for this. You are now, Avery said. Black Sun recognizes intent. You intend to help, that's enough. Colin's fingers trembled as he activated the tablet. It opened a series of encrypted files, coordinates, maps, threat assessments, and deployment orders for operatives he had never met. Names he didn't recognize, all with the highest clearance. And at the center of it all, a single objective: stop the activation of a covert strike before midnight. He looked up at Avery. This is insane. We don't have time for half of this. She didn't flinch. Time is a luxury we lost years ago. Every second we hesitate, the enemy gains ground. And they're smart, patient, lethal. And Berlin was their first trial. This is the full-scale test. Colin felt a cold sweat break out on his back. So what's the plan? Avery tapped a few keys. The war room screens shifted, showing live feeds of key strategic locations, government buildings, military installations, and critical infrastructure. Red markers pulsed in real time. Colin's stomach sank. This was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. They have embedded units in multiple locations, Avery explained. We neutralize them sequentially. One misstep, one delay, and the protocol will execute automatically. That's why I'm here. That's why I survived in Berlin. That's why Shadow Directive exists. Colin glanced at the war room doors. The officers outside were shouting, trying desperately to regain access. He could see fear etched into their faces. They didn't understand the stakes. They didn't understand the rules of engagement. They couldn't. Avery's voice cut through his thoughts. Major Reeves, focus. The first strike point is secure only if we act now. I need you with me. You follow my lead. No questions, not yet. Your training will suffice. Colin nodded, understood. Suddenly, the doors rattled again. A metallic click echoed through the room. The alarms grew louder, flashing red across the holographic displays. Colin realized with a jolt that the threat was no longer theoretical. It was here, inside the Pentagon, inside the war room. Avery's eyes never left the central console. They're testing the system's response. Someone is trying to override Black Sun. We have one shot to maintain control, or everything falls apart. Colin's heart pounded in his chest. The reality of the moment hit him. Every decision, every second, every move mattered. One mistake could mean catastrophe. Millions of lives were at stake. He swallowed hard, steadying his shaking hands. Then let's move. Avery nodded, her fingers flying across the console. The holographic displays shifted, showing the first embedded unit location. Colin could see the faint outline of a building, coordinates blinking in real time. The war room had transformed from a room of intelligence into the command center of a war no one else knew existed. And outside, the officers and generals could only watch, powerless. Colin took a deep breath. His mind raced with one thought. If this woman, Avery Hale, had survived in Berlin, erased from history and operating in the shadows, then maybe, just maybe, she was the only chance they had to survive what was coming next. The war room doors closed with a metallic hiss. The alarms continued to blare. The holographic maps flickered in red and blue light, and Avery Hale, calm as ever, looked at him and said, her voice low and commanding, "Major Reeves, welcome to the real war." Colin swallowed hard. His pulse raced. There was no turning back. He had crossed the threshold, and the first strike was already in motion. Colin Reeves followed Avery Hale through the war room, his eyes darting across the endless streams of data, coordinates, and live feeds. Every red marker pulsed with danger, every holographic display a warning he could feel in his chest. The scale of the operation was staggering, far beyond anything he had encountered in his military career. Avery moved with quiet precision, her fingers dancing across the console, eyes scanning multiple feeds simultaneously. Colin couldn't stop watching her. Every move, every decision seemed measured, flawless. It was as if she had rehearsed this exact moment countless times, though he knew better. What she was doing now was born of instinct, honed by survival, forged in the flames of Berlin. He swallowed hard. Avery, I need to understand, in Berlin, what really happened. Avery froze for a fraction of a second, then continued typing. Her fingers moved almost too fast for the eye to follow, summoning feeds and files from databases that Colin didn't even know existed. "You think you know," she said finally, her voice low and steady. "You think Berlin was just a failed mission, a tragedy on foreign soil. You have no idea." Colin leaned in closer, drawn by the gravity in her tone. "Then tell me, please. We need every advantage right now." Her eyes met his, sharp, calculating, but tinged with a shadow of grief. Berlin wasn't a mistake. It was a test, and we failed, not all of us, but enough to learn the lesson the world wasn't ready for. Colin swallowed. A test by who? Avery's fingers paused over the console, hovering like a hawk preparing to strike. By the ones who orchestrated the embedded units, the ones who thought they could predict chaos and control it. They underestimated human resilience and the consequences of failure. Colin felt a shiver run down his spine. "And you survived it all, alone." Avery nodded, eyes fixed on the console. "Alone, burned from history, erased from records, but not forgotten by those who mattered." He didn't need to ask who mattered. The black badge, the shadow directive, her clearance, her authority, they told him everything. This woman was untouchable by design. Then her fingers moved again and a new feed opened. Berlin itself. Grainy, smoldering footage of a convoy under fire. Explosions, vehicles overturned, soldiers running. And there she was. Young, scared, bloodied, but moving with purpose. Avery Hale, the sole survivor. Colin's breath caught. I remember reading the reports. You were supposed to be dead." "I was," she said quietly, "and I should have been. They left me. The world left me, but surviving wasn't enough. I had to learn, I had to plan, I had to wait." Colin swallowed hard. The reality hit him like a punch. This wasn't just a mission. This was a lifetime of survival, secrecy, and preparation converging in a single room, and now the stakes were higher than ever. "What about the embedded units?" Colin asked. "How do we stop them?" Avery's fingers moved over the console, highlighting red markers across the holographic map. "We neutralize them one by one. Each strike point has to be secured, each trigger disarmed. And timing is everything. A single misstep and the protocol will execute." Colin felt his pulse quicken. "And if we fail?" Her eyes met his, unwavering. "Failure is not an option. Millions of lives are at stake, and we don't get second chances, not this time." Suddenly, a new alarm blared. The war room's lights flickered as a series of new coordinates appeared on the map. Colin's stomach dropped. These weren't random threats. These were precise, calculated strikes, nodes that had been silently embedded for years, now activated simultaneously. "They're moving faster than we expected," Avery said, voice tight but controlled. "We have less than 3 hours before the first strike. Every second counts." Colin nodded, his mind racing. "Then we need to move now." Avery activated a series of communications channels, directing drones, field operatives, and strike teams. Colin watched as the live feeds flickered to life. City streets, government buildings, transportation hubs, all monitored in real time. The scale was staggering. He had trained for worst-case scenarios, but nothing had prepared him for this. As they coordinated, Avery paused and turned to him. "Colin, you need to understand something. In Berlin was just the beginning. The lessons I learned, the strategies I developed, they are all being tested now. And the enemy, they are smart, patient, and relentless." Colin swallowed hard. "Then why me? Why involve me in this?" Avery's eyes softened just slightly. "Because you see the truth. You're not blinded by hierarchy or protocol. You act when you must. And right now, we need every mind, every skill, every ounce of training we have. You're the only one I trust to move with me in this room, in this operation, in this war no one else sees coming." Colin felt a chill. Trust. From her, Avery Hale. He understood the weight of her words. This wasn't just strategy. This was survival, forged in fire, tempered by loss, and now shared with him. Suddenly, a new alert appeared on the central console. One of the embedded units had moved, coordinates blinking rapidly. Drones detected movement. Footage showed men armed, attempting to breach a secure facility. "They're initiating the first strike," Avery said, voice calm but urgent. "We have minutes, not hours." Colin felt the adrenaline surge. "Then let's go." Avery nodded, tapping a few commands. A holographic map projected across the war room, highlighting strike points, access routes, and security measures. Colin memorized the data, heart pounding. Every second mattered. Every movement counted. As they prepared, the war room doors rattled again. Outside, officers shouted, trying desperately to regain access. But Avery ignored them, eyes fixed on the mission. Colin realized the chaos outside didn't matter. The real battle was here in this room, in these feeds, in these decisions. Then Avery spoke, her voice low and commanding. "Colin, follow my lead. Observe, calculate, act. The first strike point is at grid 47A. We move in 5 minutes." Colin nodded, heart hammering. He had no idea what awaited them, no idea what dangers lay ahead. But one thing was clear. Avery Hale had survived the impossible once, and with him by her side, they had a chance to survive it again. As the countdown began, the war room lights flickered, the holographic displays pulsed red, and Colin realized the gravity of the moment. In Berlin's ghosts were alive, the enemy was moving, and the only way to stop catastrophe was to act now. And Avery Hale, calm, precise, unyielding, looked at him and said, This is it, no second chances, no mistakes. Are you ready? Colin swallowed, steeling himself. I'm ready. Avery's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Good, then let's begin. The war room doors slid open, revealing the first operational node. Colin's pulse raced. Outside, the chaos of the Pentagon lobby was irrelevant. Here now was the real battle. And as they stepped into the unknown, the first strike point looming ahead, Colin realized the truth. The war room wasn't just a room of command. It was the threshold of a war no one else knew existed, a war he was now part of, side by side with a woman who had survived death itself. And there was no turning back. Colin Reeves followed Avery Hale as she led him through the war room's inner corridors, each step echoing against the polished metal floors. The blue light of the holographic displays gave the space an otherworldly feel, casting long shadows across the walls. Colin's pulse throbbed in his ears. Every nerve screamed that this was more than a mission. It was a test of survival, skill, and instinct. Avery moved with uncanny precision, every step measured, every motion deliberate. Colin tried to keep pace, absorbing the information streaming from the holographic map and encrypted tablet. The first strike point blinked red, located at Grid 47A, a high-security government facility, a critical node in the city's power infrastructure. If it went offline, cascading failures would cripple operations across multiple sectors. Colin, Avery said without looking at him, voice sharp but controlled, remember this, hesitation is death. Observation is essential, but action must be swift. Do not second-guess me. Colin nodded, swallowing hard. Understood. The war room doors behind them sealed with a hiss. Outside, the alarms blared, but inside, the war room corridor was eerily calm. Avery led him down a narrow passage lined with secured access points, their badge scans glowing faintly. Colin noticed that despite the heightened alert, no one questioned their presence. Shadow Directive had carved a space within the Pentagon that even generals didn't breach. Avery's authority was absolute. They reached a side elevator that led to a secure underground access tunnel. Avery tapped her badge against the scanner, and the door unlocked. Colin stepped inside, the confined space magnifying the tension. The elevator descended silently, the hum of machinery masking the chaos above. First strike point, Avery said, scanning the tablet. Time window 18 minutes. If we fail, the cascade begins. Colin felt a cold sweat prick his neck. 18 minutes. That was barely enough to secure a high-value target, disarm embedded threats, and extract. And yet, Avery moved as if this were routine. The elevator doors opened into a stark, concrete corridor. Surveillance cameras blinked overhead. Avery's fingers flew over the tablet, disabling select sensors and rerouting security feeds. Colin's heart raced. This was the kind of operational precision most soldiers only dreamed of in simulations. Remember in Berlin, Avery asked suddenly, voice low. Remember what they taught you about fear? Colin swallowed, mind flashing back to his own training and combat experiences. Yes. Fear is a tool, she said. If you let it control you, it will paralyze you. But if you harness it, it becomes power. Channel it. Let it sharpen your instincts. He nodded, though every fiber of his being screamed tension. They reached a reinforced door, the first operational node. Avery tapped a sequence on the tablet, the door unlocking with a quiet hiss. Inside, monitors displayed the facility's internal layout. Red markers indicated the location of the embedded unit, a team of operatives armed and ready. Colin's stomach tightened. What's our approach? Avery's eyes flicked to him, steady and unwavering. Stealth first. Neutralize silently. Timing is everything. One mistake and the protocol will trigger. They moved through the facility with cat-like precision. Colin noted the silence of the corridors, the absence of civilians. The embedded team had planned meticulously, and Avery knew exactly how to counter it. She led him down a side corridor, bypassing security cameras, avoiding motion detectors, and using the building's blueprints in real time. "Remember in Berlin," she whispered as they crouched behind a corner. "They underestimated me then. Don't let them underestimate us now." Colin felt the weight of history in her words. In Berlin wasn't just a mission. It was survival, adaptation, and the kind of experience that forged someone like Avery Hale into an operational ghost. They reached the central room of the facility. Through a reinforced glass window, Colin could see the embedded unit setting up equipment, readying explosives. Avery's lips tightened. 3 minutes, she said, eyes scanning the room, calculating angles, timing, and potential threats. Colin took a deep breath. Every training exercise, every operation he had ever undertaken, felt insignificant compared to the precision required now. One wrong move, one delayed response, and millions of lives could be lost. Avery tapped a series of commands on her tablet, remotely locking doors behind the unit, isolating them from reinforcements. "They won't have backup," she murmured. "We control the environment, but only if we act perfectly." Colin's hand shook slightly as he readied his sidearm. "Then let's move." Avery nodded. In perfect synchronization, they entered the room. Colin's eyes darted as he took in the layout, 3 operatives, armed, unaware of the silent storm about to hit them. The first operative turned just as Avery's hand pressed a non-lethal taser to his side. He collapsed instantly, convulsing slightly, unconscious but unharmed. Colin's heart raced. They were moving fast, silent, precise. The second operative spun, gun raised, but Avery anticipated the motion. With a swift, fluid movement, she disarmed him, redirecting the weapon and knocking him out. Colin felt a surge of adrenaline as he followed her, neutralizing the third operative with precision. All 3 lay unconscious. Colin's chest heaved. The room was silent except for the hum of machinery and the quiet pulse of the red markers on the tablet. Avery moved to the equipment. "Planting a countermeasure now," she said, fingers flying over the controls. Colin watched as she inserted a device into the central console, overriding the embedded system. The red markers flickered, some turning green. "Almost there," she muttered. Colin felt the tension coiling tighter in his chest. One error, one miscalculation, and the protocol would trigger. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his hands, his mind. Then the final alert. The tablet blinked violently. An embedded unit in a separate location had detected a breach. Red markers pulsed faster. "They know," Colin whispered. "They always know," Avery said calmly. "But it's too late for them. Countermeasure in place now." She pressed the final sequence. The red markers turned green. The first strike was neutralized. Colin exhaled, relief mixing with adrenaline. Avery glanced at him, expression unreadable. "First strike contained, but this is only the beginning. In Berlin was a test, today is real, and there's more coming." Colin swallowed hard, trying to catch his breath. He had witnessed the impossible. A single woman had neutralized a threat that could have crippled the city. Her precision, her instincts, her experience, in Berlin's ghosts, had saved countless lives. And yet he felt a chill. This was only the beginning. Outside the facility, alarms continued to blare. The embedded units were active, moving, coordinating. Avery's calm exterior didn't waver, but Colin could sense the intensity beneath it. She had survived in Berlin, yes, but the stakes now were exponentially higher. The enemy wasn't just foreign soldiers. They were hidden, trained, and ready to strike. Avery turned to him. "Major Reeves, you understand now. This is war you cannot see, and it's only going to get worse." Colin nodded, heart still hammering. "I understand, I'm with you." She gave him a brief nod, eyes flicking back to the tablet. "Good, because the second strike won't wait, and neither can we." Colin swallowed, steeling himself. He had survived firefights, ambushes, and intelligence failures, but nothing could have prepared him for the scale, the precision, and the stakes of what Avery Hale was orchestrating. The first strike neutralized, the war room humming in the background, Colin realized one undeniable truth. Avery Hale wasn't just a survivor. She was a force of nature. And together they were the only line between the city, and perhaps the nation, and total catastrophe. As the alarms faded slightly, replaced by the soft hum of the countermeasure systems, Colin felt a grim determination settle in. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. And outside, in the shadows of the city, the remaining embedded units moved, unaware that their plan was being dismantled, one strike at a time. Avery's eyes met his again, unwavering. "Second strike point, Major Reeves, we move immediately. No mistakes." Colin exhaled, heart racing. There was no turning back. They were in the eye of a storm, and the real battle was just beginning. The war room hummed with quiet efficiency, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding across the city. Colin Reeves followed Avery Hale closely, his every step calculated but cautious. The adrenaline from the first strike still coursed through his veins, mingling with a sense of awe. Avery had moved with precision, neutralizing an embedded threat that could have caused catastrophic damage, and yet she appeared calm, almost untouchable, like a predator poised before the next strike. "Second strike point," Avery said, her voice low and commanding. "Grid 52B high-rise financial hub, critical communications node. They're using it to coordinate units across multiple sectors. If it goes offline, the cascade begins immediately." Colin swallowed hard. "How many operatives?" Avery's eyes scanned the tablet. 4, armed, trained, waiting. She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. "Timing is everything. We have less than 15 minutes to contain it. Do not hesitate, do not question." Colin nodded, trying to steady his shaking hands. He had trained for high-stakes operations, but nothing prepared him for this. No simulation, no briefing, no textbook could convey the scale or precision required. This wasn't a mission. It was survival, executed in real time, against an enemy that had spent years planning and hiding in plain sight. They moved through the underground corridors toward a secure elevator. Colin noticed that even the elevator's biometric scanner accepted Avery's badge without hesitation. Shadow Directive wasn't just a clearance. It was a key to a world no one else could touch, a reality that existed in the cracks of bureaucracy, in the shadows of the Pentagon. "Colin," Avery said suddenly, breaking the tense silence, "in Berlin, you need to understand it fully if you're going to survive this operation. That mission wasn't just a disaster, it was a test, and the ones who orchestrated it, they learned nothing from their failure except how to hide their tracks better." Colin swallowed. "You mean the enemy?" "Yes," Avery said, eyes narrowing. "Embedded units, sleeper cells, advanced weapon systems, they've been waiting for the signal for years. Berlin was supposed to warn us. It didn't, and now we face the consequences." The elevator hummed quietly as it descended, a muted calm before the storm. Colin's mind raced. He had read about Berlin in classified briefings, an operation that had gone horribly wrong, leaving only a handful of survivors. Avery Hale had been the only one left alive, and now she stood before him, orchestrating a counterstrike against the very forces that had tested her years ago. The elevator doors opened into the underground access tunnel. Concrete walls stretched ahead, lined with security sensors and reinforced doors. Avery tapped her badge against the scanner and the corridor lights flickered on, illuminating their path. Colin felt his pulse quicken. Every second counted. Every decision mattered. They reached the reinforced door leading to the second strike point. Avery tapped a sequence on her tablet, the door unlocking with a quiet hiss. Colin peered inside, and his stomach tightened. The high-rise facility was vast, a maze of offices, servers, and security checkpoints. Red markers on the tablet indicated the location of the embedded operatives. "They're ready," Avery said, voice calm but urgent. "And we have no margin for error. One misstep and the protocol will trigger." Colin nodded, gripping his sidearm tightly. The stakes were clear. Failure was not an option. Millions of lives depended on their precision. They moved silently through the corridors, avoiding cameras and motion detectors with uncanny precision. Colin followed Avery's lead, watching how she anticipated every obstacle, every security measure. It was as if she had rehearsed this operation in her mind 1,000 times over. Suddenly, a security camera rotated toward them. Avery didn't flinch. With a few swift commands on her tablet, she disabled it remotely. Colin felt a surge of admiration mixed with fear. Her knowledge, her control over the environment was absolute. They reached the room where the embedded operatives were stationed. 4 men, armed, communicating quietly over headsets. Avery's eyes flicked to Colin. "Remember in Berlin," she whispered. "They underestimated us then. Don't let them do it now." Colin's hands shook slightly as he readied himself. Every instinct screamed caution, but he trusted Avery's guidance. The first operative turned, gun raised. Avery moved like a shadow, disarming him in a fluid motion and rendering him unconscious with a non-lethal strike. Colin followed her lead, neutralizing the second operative with precise coordination. The third operative tried to reach an access panel, but Avery intercepted, planting a countermeasure that locked the system. Colin felt the tension coil tighter in his chest. Every second mattered. One mistake, one delayed response could trigger the protocol. The fourth operative spun toward them, weapon ready. Avery anticipated his movement, using a combination of martial precision and tactical control to incapacitate him. All 4 operatives lay unconscious. Colin's chest heaved. The room was silent except for the hum of the building and the soft pulse of the holographic tablet. Avery moved to the central console, inserting a countermeasure that neutralized the facility's embedded systems. The red markers on the tablet flickered, some turning green. The first wave was contained. Colin exhaled, relief mixing with adrenaline. "We did it," he murmured. Avery's eyes met his, sharp and unwavering. "This is only the beginning. In Berlin was a test, today is real, and there's more coming." Colin swallowed hard, realizing the truth. This wasn't just an operation. This was a war waged in silence, orchestrated by a woman who had survived death itself. The stakes were higher than anything he had ever encountered. Suddenly, an alert blinked violently on the tablet. Another embedded unit had detected a breach. Red markers pulsed faster. Colin felt his stomach drop. "They know," he whispered. "They always know," Avery said calmly. "But it's too late. The countermeasure is in place. Move." They prepared to leave the facility, moving with the same precision they had employed to neutralize the embedded unit. Colin's mind raced with one thought. If Avery Hale had survived in Berlin, if she had carried the weight of betrayal and disaster for years, then maybe, just maybe, she was the only chance to stop what was coming. The war room doorways slid open behind them, alarms blaring. Outside, the chaos of the Pentagon lobby seemed irrelevant. The real battle was here, in the shadows, in the calculations, in the split-second decisions that could save millions. Avery's eyes met Colin again. "Third strike point, Major Reeves. We move immediately. No mistakes." Colin exhaled, steeling himself. There was no turning back. They were in the eye of a storm, and the next move could determine the fate of countless lives. And as they stepped into the unknown, the true scale of Shadow Directive and the secrets of Berlin loomed before them like a dark tide, ready to crash. Colin Reeves followed Avery Hale into the city streets, the hum of distant alarms mingling with the night air. The second strike had been neutralized, but the war room's holographic map indicated the final node. The most dangerous, most critical embedded unit was active. This was the heart of the operation, the pulse of the enemy's plan. The fate of millions now rested in their hands. Avery moved with a purpose that seemed almost otherworldly. Colin kept pace, heart hammering, mind racing. Every step, every sound, every shadow seemed amplified. The city around them was oblivious to the storm about to strike, but Avery didn't flinch. She had survived in Berlin. She had outlived betrayal. And now she would face the culmination of all her preparation. "This is it," Avery said, her voice low, controlled. "Grid 63C National Communications Hub. All embedded units are coordinating from here. If we fail, everything collapses." Colin swallowed hard. "How many operatives?" "5," Avery said. "Armed, trained, lethal, and they're expecting us." They moved through the shadows, slipping past street cameras and avoiding patrols. Colin marveled at Avery's precision. Every move, every choice was calculated, deliberate. She didn't hesitate. She didn't falter. The weight of history and survival seemed to flow through her every action. As they approached the building, the holographic map flickered, showing real-time positions of the operatives inside. Avery's eyes scanned the data. "Timing is everything. We go in synchronized. One error and the protocol triggers. We neutralize them before they can send the signal." Colin nodded, tightening his grip on his sidearm. The air was thick with tension. This wasn't just a mission. This was the culmination of years of planning, betrayal, and survival, and he was walking into it blind, relying on a woman who had survived death itself. They entered the building through a service entrance, bypassing security cameras with a few deft commands from Avery's tablet. The interior was sterile, quiet, almost unnervingly calm. Colin's pulse raced. Every second counted. Every step was critical. They reached the central control room. Through reinforced glass, Colin could see the operatives. 5 men, armed, moving with precision, preparing to execute their strike. Avery's eyes narrowed. "They're waiting for us," she said. "Perfect." Colin swallowed. "And if we fail?" "Failure is not an option," Avery said firmly. "In Berlin taught me that. I survived because I refused to fail, and I won't start now." She moved with lethal grace, neutralizing the first operative with a swift strike that sent him unconscious to the floor. Colin followed her lead, incapacitating the second with precise coordination. The third operative tried to trigger a console, but Avery planted a countermeasure that locked the system. Colin's hands shook slightly, but he moved with focus, driven by the stakes and Avery's unyielding presence. The fourth operative lunged, weapon raised, but Avery anticipated his motion, redirecting the attack and neutralizing him. The fifth operative, the apparent leader, froze for a fraction of a second, long enough for Avery to incapacitate him with a calculated strike. All 5 operatives lay unconscious. The room was silent except for the hum of the building systems and the soft pulse of the tablet. Avery moved to the central console, inserting a countermeasure that neutralized the embedded system. The red markers on the tablet turned green. The final strike was contained. Colin exhaled, relief and adrenaline mixing in his chest. They had done it. The city, the nation, had been spared. Avery turned to him, eyes sharp, unwavering. "This is why Shadow Directive exists, to move faster than bureaucracy, beyond hierarchy, and neutralize threats before they materialize. In Berlin was a warning. We are the response." Colin's mind raced. He had witnessed the impossible. A single woman had survived betrayal, disaster, and erasure, and now she had saved millions. But Avery wasn't finished. She activated a secure channel, bringing up files that had been classified at levels Colin couldn't comprehend. Names, operations, hidden threats, all tied together in a web that spanned decades. She turned the tablet toward him. "Colin, you need to see this," she said. In Berlin wasn't just a disaster. It was orchestrated by those who thought they could control chaos. Shadow Directive isn't just a protocol. It's a safeguard, a contingency, a shield against threats the world doesn't know exist. Colin stared at the files, absorbing the weight of the truth. The scale, the secrecy, the stakes, it was overwhelming. And yet, Avery remained calm, precise, in control. "They erased you," Colin said quietly, voice heavy with awe. "They tried to bury you." Avery nodded. "They did, but survival isn't just physical, it's mental, emotional. I survived in Berlin because I refused to be forgotten, because I refused to let failure define me, and now we've stopped the final strike." Colin felt a chill run down his spine. The magnitude of what he had witnessed, what they had accomplished, was almost incomprehensible. He had been part of history in the shadows, alongside a woman who had defied death, betrayal, and erasure. Suddenly, the war room communications blinked. Avery's tablet displayed a secure message: "All strikes neutralized. Protocol Black Sun successful." Avery exhaled, a rare fleeting smile crossing her face. "It's over," she said softly. Colin nodded, still catching his breath. "For now," he said, "but the scale, the secrecy, how many more are out there?" Avery's gaze hardened. "Enough to keep Shadow Directive alive. Enough to ensure that the world remains unaware, protected by those willing to act when no one else can. In Berlin was a test. Today was a victory, but vigilance is eternal." Colin swallowed hard. The weight of her words settled over him. He had been part of something extraordinary, something few could ever comprehend. And he realized the truth. Avery Hale wasn't just a survivor. She was a force of nature, a guardian operating beyond the boundaries of normalcy. They exited the building, stepping into the quiet of the night. The city, oblivious to the storm that had just been averted, glimmered under the streetlights. Colin felt a mixture of relief, awe, and an unshakable respect for the woman beside him. Avery looked at him, eyes sharp, unwavering. "Major Reeves, today you saw what survival, precision, and resolve look like. Today you were part of something the world will never know existed. Remember it. Use it. Never forget the lessons of Berlin." Colin nodded, words failing him. The weight of history, secrecy, and survival pressed upon him. He had followed her into the shadows, into a war no one else could see, and he had emerged, alive, enlightened, and profoundly changed. As they walked away from the building, the city sleeping peacefully around them, Colin realized the enormity of what they had accomplished. The world would never know. The threat had been neutralized. Millions of lives were spared. And the woman beside him, Avery Hale, had done the impossible once again. She paused, glancing back at the building. "Shadow Directive isn't just a protocol," she said softly. "It's a promise. A promise that when the world is blind, there are those who will act. When the impossible looms, there are those who survive. And when disaster strikes, there are those who fight in the shadows, so the world never has to see the war." Colin exhaled, the weight of her words settling in. He had been part of the unseen, the unknown, the unacknowledged. He had walked beside a legend, a woman who had survived death, betrayal, and erasure. And he understood now. The war room, Shadow Directive, in Berlin, all were part of a continuum of sacrifice, courage, and silent heroism. Avery turned to him, her gaze steady, unwavering. "Major Reeves, the world sleeps, but the war never ends. Remember that." Colin nodded, heart pounding, mind racing. He had entered the shadows, faced the unimaginable, and survived. And he knew one truth above all. Some battles are fought where no one can see, and some heroes are known only by those who walk beside them. The night stretched before them, quiet, peaceful, but Colin knew the truth. Shadow Directive would endure, and so would Avery Hale. And for the first time, he felt the weight and the honor of being part of something truly extraordinary.